Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into what I like to call a biological hero's journey. We're going to look really closely at the exact process of how a seed becomes a plant, surviving the harsh elements of nature to eventually become a towering giant. I mean, seriously, think about this for just a second. How does a tiny, seemingly lifeless pebble, something that looks totally dead, survive being frozen under the snow, dropped into the ocean, or, nearly eaten by a hungry mouse, all to eventually become a giant, towering flower? Well, let's get into it, because a plant's life cycle isn't just basic biology, it's a microscale, epic quest for survival that is fraught with literal peril at every single turn. All right, part one, inside the tiny seed. So to really understand this journey, we've got to start at square one. A seed might look pretty simple on the surface, but there is an incredible, complex biological setup hidden inside every single one. It's essentially a highly advanced, self-contained survival pod. Let's actually break down this survival kit. First, on the outside, you've got the seed coat. This acts as a literal armor shield against a pretty harsh outside world. Then, nestled safely inside is the embryo. That's the actual baby plant just waiting to wake up. And finally, the endosperm. Think of the endosperm as, well, a packed lunch. It's stored food. The seed is absolutely going to need this vital energy to stay alive on its long trip before it's able to make its own food. Moving on to part two, the great seed journey.
So, that epic trip usually kicks off in autumn. A strong autumn wind starts blowing, and our tiny hero crosses the threshold, leaving its parent plant behind. But why do seeds even need to travel away from their parent plant in the first place? Well, imagine 25 kids fighting over one small pizza, a few books, and a couple of chairs. It'd be total chaos, right? It's exactly the same for seedlings. If a plant dropped all its seeds right underneath itself, all those new baby plants would be fiercely competing for very limited sunlight, water, and space. They absolutely must spread out to find their own resources if they want to survive.
And nature has engineered some ridiculously wild ways for them to travel. Some travel by wind, using propeller-shaped wings, like maple seeds, or tiny umbrellas, like dandelions. Others rely on animals, either by being eaten and pooped out as natural fertilizer, or by hitchhiking, using tiny barbs to stick to an animal's fur. Some seeds, like coconuts, just float on water to reach new land. But my absolute favorite? Explosions. There's a plant called the squirting cucumber that literally sprays its seeds and water outwards when touched. No way, right? Talk about making an energetic exit. Now, this journey isn't a walk in the park. It's incredibly dangerous. As our tiny seed flies through the air, it's facing deadly hazards. Seeds can't just grow anywhere. If they drop into the ocean, they'll drown. If they drift down onto a hot, dry desert, they simply won't survive. Even an icy mountain is way too cold for our tiny hero to take root. Honestly, only the luckiest seeds actually find the right soil. Finally, the wind dies down, and the seed settles into the earth. Now it's winter. After its massive trip, the tiny seed lies incredibly still. It rests silently under a protective, soft white blanket of snow. And it has to stay completely hidden, too, because, there's a hungry mouse patrolling the ground looking for lunch. Our tiny seed survives simply by being too small to even be noticed. Which brings us to part three, waking up and germinating. After that long, dark winter comes spring, bringing a really critical stage, germination. The warm sun shines, the snow melts away, and a triumphant biological awakening begins. This is the exact moment our hero is essentially resurrected from its winter slumber, and the literal process of how a seed becomes a plant truly kicks into gear. Okay, so here is exactly how this incredible process works. First, the seed absorbs water and swells up until it physically cracks open that protective armor we talked about, the seed coat. Then, it sends roots downwards, searching deep into the soil for water. Next up, the stem shoots upward toward the sun in the air. I want you to just imagine the physical sensation of that for a second. Stretching roots way down, stems way up. It's kind of like intense plant yoga. It takes a massive burst of energy. And that leads right into part four, reaching for the sun. Now that it's out of the ground, the tiny plant enters a fierce growth phase. It has to race against fast-growing weeds to survive and dodge the heavy footsteps of kids playing in the spring weather. But remember that packed lunch, the endosperm? Well, that is completely gone now. It needs a brand new food source for all this massive growth. And this illustrates the absolute magic of photosynthesis. The plant uses sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide from the air to create sugar. It is quite literally making its own food out of thin air and sunshine.
Fueled by photosynthesis, our little plant survives the spring and just grows vigorously all summer long. It gets taller and taller, reaching its magnificent final form. To borrow a line from Eric Carle's classic story about the tiny seed, it is taller than the people. It is taller than the trees. It is taller than the houses. It has become this giant summer flower, pulling in birds, bees, and butterflies from miles around.
Finally, part 5. The cycle starts again. But you know, the story doesn't just end with the giant flower, because autumn always returns. The days get shorter, the nights get cooler, and that autumn wind begins to blow hard again. It sways and bends the giant flower until, pop! The seed pod bursts open. Out come dozens of new tiny seeds, launching into the air, completely resetting the cycle for the next generation of plants. Which leaves us with this one final thought. When the next autumn wind blows, where is the tiny seed going to land next? Will it face the scorching desert, the freezing mountain, or the hungry mouse? What you should really take away from this explainer is that every single plant you see outside is the ultimate survivor of an epic, beautiful, and totally endless loop of nature. Thanks for learning with me today, and keep observing the incredible world right outside your window.